By the time of the events in our lesson, the disciples had seen Jesus healing and performing miracles. In fact, Peter, James, and John had witnessed his transfiguration. The lesson begins with the disciples asking Jesus, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" We often seek to be the best, the greatest at what we do, the GOAT. Sometimes this desire is not because we want to do a good job, but because we want the recognition and status of being the LeBron, the Magic, the Michael, the Brady. Like us, the disciples were often concerned about the question of the greatest. They asked this question either thinking that Jesus had already picked or chosen the greatest, or like competing brothers, they wanted to know who Jesus would pick as his heir apparent. Jesus responds not by pointing to himself, the Son of God, but rather by calling a little child over and placing the child in the midst of the disciples. He tells them that unless they become like a little child, they will not enter the kingdom of heaven. The significance of this statement lies in the fact that children were considered to be lowly and insignificant in society at that time. By telling the disciples that they must become like a child, Jesus is instructing them to be humble and without pretense. He is also emphasizing the importance of childlike faith and trust in God. Jesus is also laying the foundation for servant leadership here, saying to the disciples and to modern Christians that our focus should not be on our individual recognition. We must lower ourselves so that people can see God and see Jesus through us. The disciples and modern Christians have a responsibility to spread the gospel and avoid causing others to stumble. He tells them that if anyone causes a little one, a believer, to stumble, it would be better for that person to have a millstone hung around their neck and they should be drowned in the sea. This warning is an admonition to take care of how we influence and treat those who are vulnerable. If we use our influence, if we mistreat those who believe humbly, if we mistreat the marginalized, the poor, the weaker, as was common then and common now, Jesus says that it is better that we be destroyed. Remember, in Jewish society, often the leaders, the elite, obtain their wealth by taking advantage of those who were vulnerable. Jesus is cautioning against this. The next part of our lesson focuses on the importance of dealing with sin in the community of believers. Jesus issues a cry of pity for a world, saying that we live in a fallen world and it is inevitable that sin and hurt and offense come. But the person who brings the offense is guilty before God and has no excuse. Jesus knows that sin has its way of permeating society, creeping in and corrupting. Jesus warns his disciples about the seriousness of sin and the consequences of allowing it to take root in our lives. He tells them that if their hand or foot causes them to sin, that they should cut it off. And if their eyes cause them to sin, they should pluck it out. Obviously, this statement is not to be taken literally, but rather it is a powerful metaphor for the dramatic sacrificial action that is required to deal with sin in our lives. It emphasizes the need for radical repentance and the recognition that sin can have serious and long lasting consequences. If you think about it, sin originates within us. We have never sinned by doing things that we won't do. Our sinful thoughts and actions come within. We are in a constant battle fighting those urges within us. And Jesus is saying sin is very serious. It can envelop our lives, and it is better for us to sacrifice things that are precious to us than engage in sin. This means that we must let go of anger and bitterness and sometimes even opportunities if By taking those steps, we can avoid sin. Our lesson is a powerful passage that emphasizes the importance of humility, trust, childlike faith in our Christian walk. But it also tells us the importance of dealing with sin in ways that emphasize restoration, reconciliation, while recognizing the serious nature and the need for our repentance. Ultimately, the lesson points us to the radical nature of Christian life, which requires that we take dramatic action to deal with sin, to fight the urges within, and to encourage all of those around us to walk in the way of God. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.